In today's video, we're going to be installing undermount drawer slides. You can see here there's nothing visible on the sides of the drawers. That's because they are underneath. They are full extension. They are soft close. They come out of the cabinets super easy just by squeezing the clips, lifting the drawer out, and they go back just as easy by just clipping them back in once you get them on the tracks. I'm going to show you how to cut the size of your drawers. I'm going to show you how to make the drawers, and then I'm going to show you how to install the slides, and then we're going to install all the drawers, and we're going to check everything and make sure everything operates good. All right, guys, let's get started. I'm going to be using the special Blum jig. These are Blum tandem undermount drawer slides. I'm going to show you how easy this is to install. You don't need the jig, but I'm doing so many drawers and I do so much cabinet work that the jig just makes it a lot easier to drill those rear holes for these rear pins. I'll show you all about that. If you're not familiar with the slides, then I'm going to go over everything. By the end of this video, you're going to know how to do it. You're not going to be scared of them anymore if you haven't installed them ever before. And you're going to see why undermount drawer slides are much more superior than side mount drawer slides. Now, why do I use undermount in certain applications and why do I use side mount in certain applications? Well, it really comes down to a preference of the price point of what the customer is willing to pay and also what they're going to be used for. Now, if I'm doing really big pull-out trays that are going to hold pots and pans and heavy things like that, maybe appliances, I'm not going to go with a side mount drawer slide. I'm going to go with the undermount that has higher load rating, what it can actually hold without breaking down and collapsing. So in this instance right here also, this is a kitchen build and I want everything to be perfect in this kitchen. So we're going to be going with the 100-pound rated undermount drawer slides. Really quick, you saw me build the base cabinets. I added in this stretcher off camera while I was building. When I build base cabinets and I have a top drawer across the whole board, if I have top drawers across from one side to the other, I like to make those all the same size. So I just cut a spacer block and I put the spacer in between right here. I clamp it in place and then I butt this piece up against it and then I secure it in with some staples and some screws. And now I have something also not only to make it the same, all the drawers the same size and look uniform, but this also helps a little bit when you're installing the top drawer slide because it can sit on this piece right here while you're screwing it in place because these are quite heavy. A few things I want to go over before we do anything because we're going to make our drawer boxes today as well, not just install the slides. I'm going to show you how to make the drawers also. I'm going to show you a trick that a lot of people don't show you, and then you're going to realize that there's less work involved than you think. So the first thing you do have to get is your manufacturer's specifications and print those out because they are very important. Now these are base cabinets, so they're 24 inches deep, but the drawers are going to be 21 inches deep. You need that breathing room in the back. So if you get your 21-inch undermount slides, you have to make your drawer boxes the length from the front to the back. The sides have to be 21 inches or 533 millimeters. So I have all my measurements here from Blum in metric. I'm going to be going with metric. The cabinets are built on a 32 millimeter system on metric. If you're building your cabinets in imperial, they have them in imperial as well, so you don't have to make those transitions. So I'm going to have 533 millimeters from front to back, and then for the fronts of the drawers and the backs of the drawer, we're going to have to make a certain width to get the dimensions that we need to fit in between those slides. Something else you need to know is the number 6 by 5/8 inch screws. That's what we're going to use to secure these to the cabinet carcass. I do so many of these that I buy packs of 500 and then I take one of my empty bins from my 1.5 inch GRK screws and I just label it with a piece of blue tape and I write number 6 by 5/8 and then I know that these are my slide screws and I have 500 in a pack there and it's just easier not to lose them because they come in a big plastic bag and if you open that bag, they're going to be all over the place. Trust me, you're going to lose them. So just a little pro tip for you. I have my cut list here. I'm going to start to make my cuts for the drawer boxes. I like to use pre-finished two-sided UV-coated maple plywood for the drawer boxes just because it's more stable than going out and milling all this lumber to make the drawer boxes. 18 millimeter sides, you have to know that for when you order these slides because you can use on these specific ones, which I believe is the F series, you can use 5/8 to 3/4 material. I think there's like an H series on these tandem slides on the model number. That's for like 1/2 inch boxes only, or 1/2 inch to 5/8. These are for 5/8 to 3/4. So that's what I'm going to be working with here because I like a nice, sturdy, thicker drawer box. With a little math, They tell you on the directions, though, you have your specs here. They say the width of your opening minus 49 millimeters. So you could just measure this and then subtract 49, and that will actually give you your dimensions for your front and your back. Now, this opening here is just about, let me see what the space is, 152 millimeters. That's roughly 6 inches right there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make these drawer boxes 128 millimeters, which is just about 5 inches, and that's going to give me about 1 inch of clearance from the top of the box to the top of the base cabinet. Now, the instructions recommend that you go no less than 1/4 inch or 6 millimeters gap here, but I like the gap to be at least 3/4 to 1 inch so that you have some breathing room there. This way you don't fill the drawer up too high with stuff, and people always throw things in there and then they slam it closed, and then when you go to open it, always, you know, jam up a drawer, it gets caught on the top. So we're going to try to avoid that by leaving about 1 inch gap there. Now, the next thing you need to know is the setback for the slides. Now, if you're doing overlay, which I'm doing here, that's full overlay, it's going to sit on the outside of the cabinet. It's different from inset, which the drawer front would set inside of the cabinet. The inset would push the slides back a significant amount to allow for that thickness of the drawer front. We're doing overlay, so the setback for the overlay is 3 millimeters or 1/8 of an inch. So I'm just going to take my pocket rule and I'm going to set these to 3 millimeters. And I'm just going to put that right against the frame here. And I'm going to make a mark. So now I have my reference on that side, and I'll do the same thing on the opposite side. Now I know when I put my slides in, I'm going to push them right back to that mark right there. All right, so here is my setback line. It might be a little difficult to see on camera because of the fact that, you know, it's really bright in here. But I try to get you as close as possible. And I'm just going to lay the slide on there. Hopefully I'm not blocking the camera. And you can see where I have my setback. And I'm just going to hold it in place right there, just like that, right on that line. And I'm going to just, with my hands, clamp it right to that edge there. And I'm going to install a screw right here. So I'm just going to use a self-centering bit to punch a small hole in the center. Just enough. I don't want to go too deep with that self-centering bit, because I like the screw to hold on to as much meat as possible. Now, this is also, with this slide here, there is also a mounting pattern that they want you to do for the amount of weight. And so what I like to do is just install about 5 screws. That's what it recommends, but I scatter them out. Now, the cool thing is also about these slides is that they are adjustable in height as well. So that's 3. I'm going to come back and I'm going to put in 2 more screws. You can actually pull this out of the way. It gives you more access. And what I'm going to do is stagger the screws. So I have one here at the front, but the front one is supported by this a lot more. So in the middle and the rear, I'm going to put the extra 2, and just like that. One more, the back on the bottom. And there we go. At the back here, right before the numbers, they give you an R. So the other one has an L on it. So in the same way that I installed the other one, I'm just going to bring this back to my line right there. I want to be right on it, and I'm just going to kind of clamp it down in that position. Get a little bit of a hole going there. It's always a little more difficult working from the left side, but you know, you do cabinets and woodworking, you got to get used to it. So, all right, that's tightened up right there. And now I'll bring this forward because it's a little bit easier to drill the hole. I'm still putting the pressure because these slides are heavy. Okay, right there in the center. All right, you don't want to over torque these either. If you make them tight, it's good. If you make them too tight, you can strip them out. Now it's time to start cutting the drawers, so I'm going over to my storage rack. I have a video on this, really useful. Like I said, I'm using double-sided. This is two-sided UV coated maple. I'm just gonna bring it down. Oh, so heavy. Got a plywood gripper. Kind of try to find the center of the plywood. This way it's easier to carry. That's close enough. And okay. Now, if you're wondering why I cut up my sheet goods first with the track saw before I bring it over to the table saw, well, that's because this stuff is real heavy. And when you're building a kitchen and you're cutting up 25, 30 sheets of this, it really takes a toll on you, especially when you're getting older. And to run this through the table saw, you're not gonna get a perfect edge, because when you wrestle this thing against that fence, it's gonna move. It's happened to me before. I tried it so many times, it's not even worth it. So I'll just put a track saw on it, cut it up a little bit, and then bring it over there, and I'll get much better results. These pieces are rather narrow, so I'm over here at the miter saw just because, honestly, I have the crosscut table on the table saw, but it's a real pain to have to move the fence off of the table completely just to make these cuts and set up the stop block, because the situation, the way it is, you can't make your cut square a 90 and then flip it over, because the length of this would get in the way of the fence. It's a 36-inch rip capacity on this side. So without removing the fence, you can't make those cross cuts. And I want to leave my rip fence set up at 128 because I'm going to need 8 pieces just for the sides alone of all the drawers that I have to do on that wet wall. So basically it's easier to just come over to the miter saw, square one end, bring it down, set a stop block up at the 533 millimeters and continue on from there. I have the edge bander in the table and it's warming up. They're just too small to clamp down any way to run the machine across with that top plate. For the cabinet, the fronts of the cases, we've used the 1 millimeter PVC edge banding, and it was color matched. It was the white for the Enduro. For the drawers, for the boxes of the drawers, we're using UV coated on both sides maple, so you get pre-finished on both sides. The edge bander's ready, so I gotta get over there and start banding, but I'm using a maple. This is a 0.5 millimeter maple banding, and I'm gonna band the tops of all the drawer boxes, and then I'm gonna finish that off with a little bit of shellac, and that will match this UV coat on the insides of all the cabinet carcasses that are pre-finished, and that'll give it protection also. So what I'm doing here is, while the edge bander was warming up, I just have my parts laid out, and I just go 3 fingers past to measure, and that's how I break it off. And then what I do is I'll just take all my pieces, and just to keep everything kind of neat and together, I'm taking the pieces with their banding and I'm putting them back in the case where they go. So I know that that drawer box and those drawer box parts that are going to get banded are going to go right back in here. So I don't have any confusion later on and have to worry about measuring and marking and all that stuff. The only marking that I do is on the tops of the drawer boxes. You see these lines, that's where I'm going to edge band. You can see on the backs of the front and the back of the drawer boxes, I'm putting these 3 lines here with pencil marks on both sides. That's where the pocket screws are going to go. And then on the inside, where I want the inside of the drawer, on the bottom I have a little line there. That's where I'm going to cut the groove for the drawer bottom. So this way there's no confusion later on. I won't have to worry when I'm putting everything up against the saw and on the edge bander and cutting all my parts, you know, to put together for the pocket screws, which face it's going to go in. I don't screw up, because let me tell you, trying to do this all by memory and not marking your stuff, you're going to get screwed up and turned around, and you're going to make a mistake, and then you're going to throw out material. So for the extra couple of seconds it takes, just mark your stuff of where you want your cuts to be, where you want your grooves to be, where you want your edge banding to be, and you'll come out on top, I promise you. And you can see all of my drawer slides are in. That cabinet there, all of those are in and they're ready to go. So now I'm just gonna run these through the edge bander. Once I get everything edge banded, then I'll show you where I put the pocket screws and the grooves. First, we're gonna do the grooves so I know where to put the pocket screws so I don't hit the grooves. And then I'm gonna show you how I put my drawer boxes together, and then we'll drill the holes with the jig so that it fits into the drawer slide, because we also have to install these front clips. They go on the underneath the bottoms of the drawers. I have all my parts for my drawers all cut and edge banded. I don't have the pocket screw holes drilled in them yet, because what I like to do is, you see where I have it marked on the bottom of the board, that's where I'm gonna make my groove. I do that first, make the grooves first, because then I know exactly on the sides, the fronts and the backs, where I need to put those pocket screws without going into that groove. So that's an important step. Also, if you notice on the back, with a marker on the bottom side, this is the bottom side of the drawers that's never going to be seen, I marked the number of each cabinet according to my plans. And so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put shellac on the edge banding to seal it up real quick, and then I'll throw it on the drying rack and I'll leave it. This stuff dries in like 10 minutes. So that's really quick. It's a great finish to match the pre-finished UV coated plywood. And the reason I'm doing this is, you know, not just for like the edge banding, possibly wicking up moisture, but it's just kind of match it a little bit better and make it look like the whole thing is a solid piece of maple, because that's what you want. You want, you know, the drawer boxes to look like you used solid maple. Otherwise, you wouldn't go out and buy pre-finished maple plywood. So if you have birch, then you would do this with birch edge banding. Now, basically, what I'm just going to paint on real quick the shellac, and then I'll throw it on the drying rack. This is the end of the day for me. I'm not going to do the grooves and the pocket screws and assemble anything till tomorrow, so this is a really good time to do it. I usually try to keep my glue ups and finishing for the end of a day, because you can just set it and forget it basically. So you just, you know, put on the shellac, and then you just, you know, leave for the day and let it dry on the rack, and that's it. You're good to go. So now you can see, if I get a little bit closer here, the shellac blends right in with that UV coated plywood. And so it might be a little bit lighter on the camera, but if I back it up like this and you can see in the light, it's pretty much all one color. You'll see it all come together later. So if you do it sideways like that, you won't get any drips, and then you just take it and put it right onto your drying rack. And now you can see the best part of that drying rack that I made. And if you haven't checked out the video for that, just head over to my channel, and you see I only made it a couple of videos ago, not that long ago at all. So you'll be able to find it real quick. But the best part about it is I got some of these pieces that are smaller fronts and backs for the smaller cabinets. And since I put these extra pieces here, I can actually get the front and the back of that same drawer on those side extension pieces, because they are too small to fit in here, so they won't reach from side to side. I want to try to bring you in a little bit closer so that you can see the tops of the drawers, and you can really see now how the color here of the UV, it blends right in. There's some shadows going on, but regardless of seeing the shadows, you should be able to catch the color match on that. And it looks like a solid piece of maple. Well, I promised you guys that I was going to catch the deer out there while I was filming. I didn't want to scare them, so I shut the light in my shop, but they're all right here outside the shop eating the grass. Just about 150 feet away. I don't bother them, they don't bother me. Sometimes they come right up here, right to the grass, right in front of my shop. You can see right now it's all dead because it's the winter, but usually they come over here and eat that tree. Okay, a couple of things here. I left the MFT for the Contoro here so that I can use this for my box parts, run this through to cut the groove, and then drop them here. You can leave these in place when you're doing this. It helps a lot to keep the parts up against the fence and to run it straight. You have to get rid of the riving knife, because when it's passing through there, the riving knife is just like slightly higher than the blade, and it will scratch the material. Ask me how I know. It's happened before. All right, let's get rid of that. I've learned from my mistakes. So I'm telling you in advance, and you can learn from my mistake too. Okay, a couple of key measurements that we need to follow here. Your groove has to be a 1/2 inch up from the bottom of the drawer box, or 13 millimeters. So I'm working with metric. I'm going to set mine to 13. Now, once I set it to 13, I also have to set this to what I like to do with the groove is always go about halfway through the material for the bottoms of the boxes. So the depth of my groove is going to be 9 millimeters. And it just also helps me to, when I'm cutting the bottom panels to slide in, it just helps me to do the math also. Because as you've seen in the last video, when I made the cabinets and I put the backs in the cabinets, I did the same thing. I went halfway through the material, 9 millimeters, and then I add that into the width and the length to get my measurements, and then I subtract 2 millimeters, and that gives me enough room to slide it in, 1 millimeter on each side, without binding. So I'm just gonna set the blade using my pocket rule to 9 millimeters. Now I have to set the fence to 13. This is an important measurement because those clips have to fit underneath that section of the drawer. So you have to be dead on with this. So if you're not using metric, in your case, it'll be 1/2 inch. In my case, I'm sticking with the metric for everything, so it's gonna be 13 millimeters. So I have the material situated in a way where I know where my groove's gonna go. This piece will go up against the fence. I'll run it through. Once I get all the grooves cut on all the pieces, I'll bump the fence over and I'll keep making test cuts until my 1/4 inch bottom panel fits perfectly in there, nice and snug. So now I have all my parts here, top of the dust extractor, hooked up to dust extraction. That helps a lot. And I haven't marked out that this side has to go down. That's where the pocket screws have to go on the face of the front and the back of the drawer box. The groove side doesn't get pocket screws, obviously, because then you would see them inside the drawer. This will be hidden behind the drawer front, and then the back side will be hidden in the back of the cab. All right, back over to the table saw. I'm going to put the riving knife back in, so raise the blade all the way up. And if you don't do this next step that I'm doing right now, then you're going to be making an encapsulated drawer bottom. I don't like to encapsulate the drawer bottom, which means, if you're not familiar with that term, that means that the drawer bottom is completely trapped inside of the drawer box. You can't take it out ever unless you disassemble the drawer, which would mean unscrewing the drawer completely and then busting out the brad nails that we're going to put in to tack it in place before we put the pocket screws. If ever there's a problem with the drawer bottom, you're not going to be able to get it out. Now, also another thing is that if you don't cut that piece off on the backs of this drawer, you're going to have to cut notches for those undermount drawer slides, which also takes extra time to do. So being that I don't like to do that, and I don't like to encapsulate the drawer bottom in case I ever have to replace a drawer bottom, what I do is leave the table saw in the setting where it was, because the last groove that you made for the backs of the drawers is exactly in the same spot. So now what you need to do is cut it off at that groove. And so this way we can slide the bottom panel in of the drawer through the back of the drawer, and then we can screw it in to the bottom piece. And you've seen me make drawers like that before in the past. So this is just a good way that we're able to take the drawer bottom out if we ever need to. Also, it prevents me from having to take extra time and cut those little notches out for the drawer slides. Okay, time to assemble the drawer boxes. I'm going to be using 18 gauge brad nail or 1.5 inch brad nails. Then I'm going to be attaching it with pocket screws. You don't need glue for this step, okay? So I've been using this method of construction for drawer boxes for literally over 10 years, and I still have not had a callback from any of my clients. I have never had a failure on any of the drawer boxes. So this is a good method of construction. If anybody tells you you need glue, it's just because they want to glue it. You don't have to waste time with that. You don't have to use dominoes if you don't want to. You don't have to use any kind of, crazy joinery methods unless you absolutely want to. You do drawers the way you want to do drawers. I'm telling you from a professional standpoint, it saves time to do it the way I'm gonna do it right now. And if you watch other professionals who actually run a cabinet shop, they're gonna do it in the same method. So you make sure that you're taking your groove side towards the inside. I like to face my top of my drawer boxes facing down on the bench. This way when I put them together and I nail them together, they're gonna be nice and flush, and I know the tops are gonna be flush also because I'm referencing off the bench. You're gonna make sure your bench is flat. The drawer box construction has to be with the drawer fronts and the drawer backs encased in between the two sides. That's what gives you your shear strength when pulling. So the first thing I'm gonna do is get this nice and flush on the top here, and I'm gonna put a brad right through there. And you're gonna make sure that you're not shooting it into the groove. I do the top first, and then I'm gonna move it a little bit closer to the edge because a lot of times the gun hits the bench. So now another thing here, you wanna make sure that you're not shooting it into where you're gonna put the pocket screw. So I'm gonna shoot it in between where the pocket screws go. And then one up here. Okay, that's all nice and flush. We'll come to the other side, but I'm gonna switch this around here because I'm gonna need it to hang a little bit towards the end of the bench. I get one part flush at a time. So now you can see how this lines up with the groove. We're gonna be able to slide the bottom of the drawer in there, screw it down to this back piece. Now by doing this with the brad nails first, it kind of holds everything in place so that you can get your pocket screws in without it shifting on you. So now, before you cut your bottoms, this is as good a time as any to check your progress here and make sure that you did your drawer box dimensions right. So take your drawer and you can slip it right into the slot, put it right on top of those tracks. And then this is where it gets interesting right here. If you don't have the jig, a little trick, you could actually center the drawer and then tap it. And then what happens is when you pull it back out, those two adjustment tabs in the back will actually leave you with a nice little dent in the bottom of each side. And that's where you have to drill your hole. Now I have the jig, so what's gonna happen is I have so many drawers, I won't have to do that every time. I just have to take the jig, turn the drawer box upside down, and this jig goes in here just like this. And it's already set to the depth with a stop collar, and I just drill my 6mm hole, and I move it to this side, drill the hole, and I move on. And I just keep, banging out the drawers that way and slipping them right in. Okay, now two of my drawers for cabinets number 2 and number 3 are exactly the same size, so I cut the bottoms at the same time, so it's an easier setup. And now you'll see what I mean when we slide the back in, and then we can screw it in through the back here. You could just take a drawer bottom, just reach in there, and okay, so I switched to my countersink bit, and now I'm just gonna drill and countersink a hole. And now for the back here, I like to use number 8 5x8 screws because they are a little bit meatier. They're a little bit thicker. They hold a little bit better. Okay, it's nice and secure. Drill box is ready for me to flip it over, use the jig, drill the holes, and then install the front clips. The fun part, flip the drawer upside down, flip it this way so you can see what I'm doing. Now I'm taking the jig and putting it up against the wall here tight, and I'm gonna pre-drill the 6mm hole, the 6mm bit that comes with it, and the stop collar. Now on the back of this jig, it has a area where you preset your stop collar with your 6mm bit. That tells you how far you need to go in, how deep. And then you just put this over your side of your drawer, and then you pre-drill. Then you come to this side, go into the opposite, push it up against there. And now you can see we don't have to worry about cutting a notch out because the back is already secured and it's missing that piece. Otherwise you would have to notch out. You could actually use this tool. It all depends on how you want to make the drawers, but what you would do is you would actually notch out using this tool right here, notch out that whole section, and then you would have another piece across here. I think it's a waste of time. Then we turn our attention to the fronts now. We need to install these clips. So you look on the clips, it has an R and an L. So this is the right side, and that goes just like this in the corner. This one has the L, that goes in this corner right here. So what we're gonna do, once again, we're gonna come back to our number 6 5/8 screws, and we're just gonna hold these brackets in place. I'm gonna screw them right in. Then what I like to do is come back with a screwdriver and just tighten them up by hand, making sure they're good. Do the same on this side. The trick here is when you're putting this in, you want to make sure that you have it up against the side, and you want to make sure that you're keeping it down so that it's level with the flush with the drawer box, and you want to screw it in on the angle that is pre-bored into the clip. And don't over tighten the first screw as you put it in. Leave it just slightly loose, then come back and screw the other side in. And then just come back with the screwdriver and give it a little bit of a torque just until it's tight. You don't want to over torque these either. Let's get that off there. And now when you put this in, flip the drawer over. Let's see if you can see that. Just put the drawer in, and then you're gonna have to force it to click into those holes in the back, and that'll make the clips engage. So you'll get to a certain point here, and then you'll have to hold the back of the cabinet and put it in. Make sure that you're clipped in as flush as possible, and then there you go. Nice soft close, perfect. And these are adjustable up and down and left to right. The operation is so much smoother than the side glides. It's just so easy to open the drawer and close it. That's it. Now I can install the rest of the clips, and I can put the rest of the drawers in after I finish assembling them all. After I install each drawer, I like to check the functionality of it, make sure everything is operating smoothly. In this case, everything is full extension, soft close, it's engaged in the clips in the back, and I'm recessed less than 1 millimeter inside the cabinet face, which is what I want. One more drawer to put in. Okay guys, so that's it for today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Keep in mind that I have this set up here just on my workbench just so that I can get a workflow going here, installing the drawers and slides and stuff like that. But in between, this is the farm sink base, and I have to put some support bracing on the sides still. But in between this base and this base here, which is going to be the trash pullout, which is going to have to get moved over, this is going to have a dishwasher in here with 2 finished panels, pre-finished panels. Those are going to sit between the sink and this cabinet here. So keep in mind that this is a much longer actual, run than what you see here right now. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I hope you got something out of it. I hope you guys understood everything I did. It's not really that difficult. Remember that when you cut off the back of that piece of the drawer where the groove is, that will speed things up for you greatly. Now, I think the reason that they tell you to cut that notch out is for maybe there's a couple of reasons. A couple of reasons being, number one, if you're installing your own undermount drawer slides on a previously made kitchen where you already have the kitchen in place, the drawers are already made by a factory. Usually the old way, a lot of cabinet makers would encase completely the drawer bottom and trap it inside the drawer. Not many people do that anymore because, like I said, you know, in the previous part of the video here, once you trap that in there, you're locked in with that drawer. That's it. You know, you can't go ahead and replace that panel anymore unless you cut a piece of that drawer out, which is going to lead to, you know, changing the size of the drawer because of the blade kerf and stuff like that. So it's really not worth it. So just, you know, leave that back groove cut off completely, and then everything will fall right into place. You won't have to notch it out. It'll save you some time. But if in the event that you did have to install these on previously made cabinets, then you're going to have to go ahead and follow the instructions on how to cut that notch out. The way I do it, I build the drawers, I build the cabinets, so it's a little quicker for me to do it that way. And I've seen a lot of other people doing it the same way as me too. So it's not, you know, something that I invented. So everybody's, you know, finding easier ways to do things that still work. All right, guys. So definitely hit the subscribe button, hit the picture of a notification bell. It's going to notify you every time I upload a new video. I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. Check the description box below. That's going to have a link to all the tools and jigs and everything that I use in the shop when I'm working on stuff like this. So you'll find all my affiliate links down there in the description box should you need any of those tools or jigs. All right, everybody. Thanks for joining me in the shop, and I'll see you next time. Don't forget that this is a video which is a part of a series. I'm going to group these into a playlist. This is going to be a full kitchen build, so you're going to see these videos getting grouped together in the kitchen build playlist. All right, so if you need to reference anything, or if I do any videos in between that don't pertain to the kitchen, like maybe a tool video or something like that, or something different, you know, spraying or whatever, then that's going to be outside of this playlist. Okay, so this will be all of the kitchen builds grouped into a playlist so that you can watch every one of the videos as I upload them. All right, guys, thanks for joining me, and I'll see you next time.